True.
Tu parles français, non?
No. Est-ce que ça marche? No, no, no. Okay, it's better now. No. Hey, hey. Since we've got a sound problem, no? Or is it okay? Okay, perfect. So, hello. Thanks for coming, and I'm really so amazed to see so many people coming to see what the Angular is all about. And I'm really sorry for not speaking in French, but I guess your English is far better than my French. So I understand some French. So I mean, if you prefer to ask questions in French, I will try to do my best to understand. So thanks for having me here. And thanks for all the sponsors for organizing this event. So before we start about Angular, just so you know me, so my name is Pawel Kozlowski, and I would kind of put a label on me being like open source hacker, in the sense that I really love open source. I mean, both on the software writing level and also on the human interaction level. There's so much energy in the open source. So every time I like certain piece of software, I'm trying to get involved in the community and give back a bit what I'm receiving from all the great developers. And this is how my my journey with AngularJS started. So I I was looking for a library for myself, one of those, the MVC or MVV or whatever frameworks in a browser, and I was evaluating the usual bunch that was available on the market, and Angular kind of from the very beginning made sense to me. I mean, there was something in this framework that was striking me. Its simplicity, it kind of really from the very beginning made sense. So this is how I started to dig deeper into it and got involved in the community. And at one point I got a proposal to write a book about it, so it's now available. And this is in turn how I got in contact with the core development team at Angular. And I'm now part of the Angular team trying to help with the development of AngularJS. And also I'm a person behind the Angular UI and mostly Bootstrap components, so trying to get some software written. So I think since it's introductory talk, I'm not going to dive into the details of AngularJS, how it works behind the scene, but what I would like to do here is to encourage you to try it out and try it for two reasons. First is that it really tries to make a browser a better place for us as web developers. I mean, we managed to write like really wonderful software, but the browser is sometimes really painful, place to be in. So Angular tries to solve this problem. And another thing about it is that it is really different. It's really different compared to the approaches that we had before and the approaches that exist on the market. So I'll try to show how it's different compared to other things. So like basic basic facts about AngularJS, it seems to be like a new kid on the block. I mean, everyone says, okay, Angular is a new framework, it's getting popular, and it's great that it's getting popular, but it kind of didn't came out of nowhere. It was in the active development for more than 4 years, and I think it's only recently kind of started to get popular. So it's not like it's new in terms of popularity, but in terms of code, it's not so new. It's an open source project started by Google, but it's very open. Probably if you go to GitHub and see the number of pull requests that are contributed by the community, there's the huge contribution from outside of Google. Okay, sorry. What I can do on my side to put it closer. Sorry? Okay. Guys, could you... Sorry? Simple instructions to a browser, and we let browser to figure out what to do in terms of rendering, right? We are giving some hints, but ultimately it's a browser that makes a decision. And then along the way, we move to something like this. Of course, I mean, it's exaggerated, right? It's the hello world in JavaScript. Like nowadays, no one would write it like this. But this is like, even if we use frameworks or use jQuery or something like this, behind the scene, this is what happens, right? Like the browser needs to execute this code. And I don't know if you can probably recognize hello world here because it's written hello world, but it's nothing like this very declarative thing. So my mental picture when I think about this, the JavaScript development is just like this. We need to take on this superhero clothes and then okay, I will drink this enormous amount of coffee today and I will work on this application. And it's really amazing what we arrive to do. I mean, we just able to do great great applications, but it's painful. But then you say okay, why this guy is ranting here? The web development is good. We've got jQuery, which is the most popular, the library that is deployed over the web. It was around for a few years. We know how to use it. There are patterns, there are books. We can write great applications, and it's true. But when you come to think about it, it's just like jQuery was created to solve the problem of the insane DOM API that we've got, right? I mean, it's just like before we couldn't write in the reliable way cross-browser web applications. So jQuery, oh, I think I, which is good. So I can I can breathe now. So this was it. We needed something to make DOM manipulations a bit more normal, right? But this is something that should have been done in a browser. I mean, we should have like a normal API from the very beginning. It was solved by the library, but it is just like masking masking the problem in a browser's API. And the other thing that jQuery did, it really is so much DOM focused, right? I mean, it tells you like we've got those gray selectors, so we can grab the DOM element. We've got all those tools that we can manipulate this DOM element, but the programming model didn't change like compared to the raw JavaScript. We just like do very low level precise instructions like get this DOM, change this property. If there's this event, grab another DOM element, and so on and so forth. So while this, code snippet is better, it's still not perfect. So this is where AngularJS comes, and it isn't like building on top of this jQuery or DOM-minded programming model, but it tries to think like, what should we do with a browser so we can actually write web applications and like don't get insane in the process of doing so. So this is like really another approach which we want to like rethink how the browser can be a better place for us. And I like also this quote from Igor Minar, which is the like tech lead of the Angular project, because like at one point there were a number of discussions on the mailing list, on the Google Plus, and so on. What is the pattern behind AngularJS? Is it like MVC or MVVP or like some other? And then Igor like said like, okay, I declare AngularJS being like model view whatever. And if you need a label to put on top of it, you can put it like you can call it MVC or MVVP or whatever. But it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just like so different. You need to try it out to get a feel of it. So enough of theory, and let's start with examples. So one of the most important things in AngularJS is to go back to this very declarative HTML that we had at the beginning, and have like the framework do a bit of heavy lifting for us. So if you see this, like hello world written AngularJS style, which is live here and so on, this is actually the whole code for this mini application, right? So like if you compare it to jQuery, or it's more or less the same amount of code. If you compare it to the raw JavaScript, it's not at all the same amount of code, but the hello world itself starts to look as it looked before, only that this time it's dynamic. So how this magic happens? So what you will see a lot in AngularJS web applications are those little funny attributes and some custom elements. And in AngularJS world, they are called directives. So what AngularJS does is like saying like, let's extend the base HTML language to give some dynamic behavior to the DOM. And what is happening here that we are like bootstrapping an application. This is the whole thing that is needed to bootstrap an application. We can see a syntax that you could probably recognize from the other frameworks like handlebars or something like this, right? I mean, we can immediately see that there is we are outputting a name here, and the only unfamiliar territory probably is this like fancy ng model thing here. And what it does, it says like, dear AngularJS, whenever anything in the DOM changes, take me the value from the input and put it in the name variable, right? And at the same time, we've got something else. We've got saying like, whenever this variable changes, output me in the DOM. So we start to have like a two-way connection. Like every time something interesting changes in the DOM, we can put it, we can take some interesting value from the DOM and put it in a JavaScript variable. And as soon as it's available in JavaScript, we can immediately output it on the screen. And like once again, there is we don't have to register any DOM listeners here. We don't have to explicitly say, you know, when this thing changed, please re-render a template, right? I mean, this is the AngularJS will observe all the model mutations and will do the heavy lifting for us. So it is really one of the fundamental differences between traditional the in-client side templates, where we had like a template, we had a set of model values, we've been mixing it together and putting it in a DOM. And then when we saw that some other variables have changed, we had to repeat the whole process, right? Once again, let's intermingle everything together, let's put it in a DOM. Here it's AngularJS will take care of like doing this process constantly. So if you will often hear this statement that the AngularJS is declarative while jQuery is imperative. And what it means really is that somehow we need to realize that with jQuery we need to enumerate all the little steps that we have to do, right? It is really super explicit. We say like, oh, like when input changes, take the value and put it in the in some other element. While with AngularJS we just give some hints, like okay, when the and saying like every time there is the change in the input, put it in the model and then render the model whenever it changes. So what is happening here is that we are truncating a lot of code that we need to write. I mean, we just simply, well, we don't have to write code. And this is great because, I mean, this is the work that framework does for us. But it has some other consequences, which probably there are two that should be mentioned. First is that like by giving control over the DOM manipulation, we are just simply giving up a bit of control. So we the Angular machinery. I'm not going to into the details of AngularJS modules, but in essence you can declare a module and put some controllers on it and other stuff which we are going to see. So we started the Angular here, nothing still happening. Let's make this form live. So there are even in this simple form there are like few moving parts. We've got those buttons that needs to get the proper state. They need to get enabled, disabled. We need to see like how many remaining tweets are here and so on. So we saw already the ng model attribute that allows us to do two-way data binding between the content of the DOM and tweet and some model. So let's see if it works. So we can see that immediately we've got our form live. So what I'm doing here is that I'm binding the content of the text area to the variable, and this variable lives in a AngularJS scope. So scope is basically a map where Angular keeps the data to be exposed to a template. So just like like everything that is on a scope is available to a template. And the other thing that you can probably immediately see when we look at this example, we've got this funny scope. But other than this, we are manipulating raw JavaScript objects. We are dealing with the objects or arrays, but we are not calling any specific APIs to make the refresh happen. We can really interact with the normal JavaScript objects. So then what happens on this model, we've got a tweets controller. So controller in AngularJS has nothing to do nothing to do with controllers in MVC. So it doesn't it doesn't control anything, and its probably name is a bit misleading. But the role of the controller is to initialize a scope. So like we've got this map that is called scope that gets things exposed to a template, and controller is there just to do initialization of this map. This is only it just doesn't control anything. It just initializes things. So what we want to initialize, that we've got the this initial tweet, we've got the list of tweets that we are going to that is going to keep all the tweets that we tweet, and there are some methods there. Once again, those methods that we've got are pure JavaScript. There is no specific AngularJS APIs to be called. Magic happens without specific calls. So let's use this controller. So we've got methods, ng controller, tweets, controller. So what's going on here? We've got this number here that should show us the remaining tweets, remaining characters. Let's make it live. Pretty simple. We can mean minus tweet text length. Voila. So what you can see here is that like we make a piece of screen being driven by a model. I mean, we've got one text that we that we keep in a variable, but we start to drive our other parts of the screen from this model, and this is also one of the center things in AngularJS, that the model is the source of truth. I mean, we really the AngularJS way of thinking. Someone is destroying my presentation. Okay, cool. It's fine. I didn't ask, is it like too small, too big, or can you see it? Or, okay. Because otherwise I would be talking to myself. So like we've got this model thing, and it starts to drive other elements of the screen. So we've got one source of truth. The way of thinking is like, let's take the model, let's give some hints to AngularJS in forms of directives, and let it do the heavy lifting. We just like don't do any manipulation here. So what other things are here? For example, we've got this button that should be only enabled when there is a text, right? There is no point enabling it otherwise. So we've got another directive called end disabled, and let's say we disable this button if we don't have any text. Length. Right? Sorry. Ha! I was checking. No, it was real type. So you see, so like once again, this tweet, this button, and disabled. We should disable this one if the length is not valid. So we've got this method has valid length. But voila. So it's one of the things that I wanted to show here is that once again we've got this model thing, and we drive different elements from the model. But in jQuery approach, what you would do is like you would have a listener on the change here, and you would say like every time something changes here, go to this button, change its property, go to this button, change its property, go to this element, change its property, and so on and so forth. So we've got like this one central method that kind of, like coordinate like all the pieces of the screen. And here we've got like very localized. I mean, if I want to work on this button right now, I'm focusing only on this button and driving it from the model. So let's make it more lively. Let's add some tweets, so we can use the another directive called ngClick, which is basically every time you click, we call it add method. And this add method is pretty simple. You take a existing tweet and you push it in on top of the tweets array. Once again, pure JavaScript, nothing special here. Nothing happens, right? Because we don't have anything to display. So let's try to display it. Tweets. Perfect. So once again, manipulating model is as easy as interacting with normal JavaScript objects. So let's display the list of tweets. So we've got this structure. We've got for each tweet we've got li, and we want to display the content of the list. And it's pretty simple with another directive called ngRepeat, which is basically saying take a collection and repeat this DOM element, repeat this li plus each children for each item in a collection. So what Angular is going to do here is saying like, okay, this is this animate tweets class here, which is nothing more than CSS transitions. So, but what AngularJS will do is to select, okay, now I'm adding an item to a list, so I'm going to add appropriate classes at the right time and remove appropriate CSS classes at the right time to make the animations work. And obviously, it is possible to do it in such a declarative way because we've got the machinery that does the DOM rendering. You could do it by hand, but you have to do it by hand, right? I mean, so this is the... so what else? Well, I mean, let's see a bit of filtering on a list, which should be pretty... once again, ng model, you know it already. We want to have a search term, and we want to filter the list with the search term. And it's pretty easy because we can use something called filter in AngularJS. So this pipe is like filtering, and we are going to say like, you know, like give me the list that only has those search terms inside. So AA, BB, CAC, and then, you know, you can filter it and so on, and with the animations working. So it really, I mean, it doesn't take much code to have a like a small mini application that is functioning here. Okay. So let's switch back. So I hope that, sorry, before. So I hope that I managed to convince you that, well, at least hope, managed to convince you that with this declarative approach, we can dramatically reduce the amount of code that we need to write. And we also take advantage of the machinery to do fancy stuff like animations. And this is part of AngularJS that people see immediately by playing with the examples on the homepage. Like this is kind of already mind blowing. Okay, I can like work with the raw JavaScript. I can develop applications pretty quickly. More developers of the framework can do in terms of special elements. We can do as well. We've got the same API. Nothing. We don't have like less power. We've got actually the same power. And this is absolutely great because we can create our own elements, give them whatever name that we understand and whatever meaning we can put on this element, and we can make it live. We can add new elements. We can even bring back the ones that were removed. I don't suggest that you should do it in terms of blink, but it is possible. So what we can do with those custom elements there, and there are really different categories of those directives that we can create, and there are multiple usages. And the one pretty obvious is that you can create your own wording, you can create your own vocabulary, you can create your own dictionary of terms that make sense to you and your application. So even for the simple things like bootstrap alerts that create HTML like this, you can shrink it a little bit. So maybe you are not saving much of HTML here, but at least you are creating your own thing, your own alert. I mean, I know that I've got an alert. It has a type. I can use it anywhere in the web application. And there are, well, and this alert was like pretty simple. We defined that there is a bit of behavior here, but okay, well, this is not much. But actually, you can build more complex directives or create like reusable components. And here's the example of pagination that probably we can that we are going to use in multiple places in web applications. So what we gain by encapsulating this piece of HTML into a directive is that, once again, we give it our name, our friendly name. We remove HTML duplication, right? Because like this is not a rocket science. I mean, we can do it in the raw AngularJS. This is pretty simple to do, but even though you have to repeat it all the time, you have to remember to add the appropriate class and so on and so forth. So it's so much more convenient to just say like, okay, here's the pagination. This is the current page on which I want to be. It has this two-way data binding. So every time the current page changes, you will have your UI updated, and every time you click on the page number, you will have your model updated, and so on and so forth. But the other funny thing is that you can write those directives or those mini widgets in the exact same way as we written a mini application, which means we can, I'm going to show you a template for, code and the template for this directive, if I can find it. The widgets. So pagination. So this is the definition of the directive. I don't want to scare you with this because there is a bit of magic, but here of the magic how we declare directives. But if you scroll down to the meat of this directive, to the core of it, there is not much difference as compared to the applications that we've been writing. We've got like a scope. We manipulate a model on the scope, and later on we can have a template for this pagination, which, once again, this is just encapsulating the markup. So the funny thing we can do is to completely separate the behavior of this directive with the template, and as soon as we do so, we can have a template for Bootstrap CSS. We can have the template for Foundation CSS, and so on and so forth. So we can really decouple a bit our applications from the low-level HTML and CSS. And obviously, we can go on and create even more complex directives like this. This is once again, ability for us to work on the higher level, like create our own vocabulary, encapsulate it, and somehow enforce consistency, because like in the directives like accordion, there are so many classes that you have to take care of, like you have to make sure that animations are working and so on and so on. So if you have to repeat it all over the places where you want to have accordion, it's certainly possible. I mean, it's not magic. I mean, you can do it without any directives, but you have to repeat yourself, risking all the bad things that happen when we duplicate the code. So we've been through two-way data binding, this like the magic that powers AngularJS. We've been through directives that for me are one of the coolest part of the framework. But the AngularJS, it's not only about the rendering engine, it's really a complete framework. So when you include this AngularJS like 70K file, you are not only getting the rendering engine, but you are getting a complete framework which is sufficient to write rather complex web applications. And you will find in the core of the framework all the libraries, like Ajax abstraction, all the utilities, really everything that you might need. And while you dig into these utilities or the way we use them, you're probably going to notice pretty quickly something that is not so common yet in JavaScript, but pretty common in other languages, which is dependency injection. So here there's an example of the user's controller. It's like, kind of abstract. We are querying the collection of user through Ajax. But the interesting part is not the querying, but actually how you are getting access to the utilities that you are going to use in your controller. So here we are just saying like, okay, in this function I need scope, because I need to initialize it. I need HTTP, I need log. And we don't care from where it's coming. And it's coming from AngularJS because it's getting to be injected. And dependency injection is the pattern that's been around for quite some time. But it has like two pretty powerful consequences. The first one is that you can easily swap dependencies for your own. So even if AngularJS is coming with his own log implementation that by default is going to log all the error messages to a console, you can swap it to something that is going to send errors to your server, for example. And this is pretty much easy when you've got the system like dependency injection. But swapping dependencies come very handy when you need testing your JavaScript code. And the unit testing is very central thing in AngularJS. Like it's not only that the framework is very well tested. I mean, there are like I think at this point there are more than 2,000 like tests executed for on each build in several browsers. But so like the AngularJS developers went into the and made sure that the framework is stable, that it's well tested. But it's not only this; it's also making sure that the code that you write against the framework is testable. And it's really, when you see things like HTTP, obviously when you are doing unit tests, you want to write them fast, right? I mean, especially if you are doing test-driven development. So if you want to go fast, obviously we don't want to do XHR requests during the unit test. So what we can do with dependency injection is to swap this HTTP thing for a mock implementation that doesn't do real XHR request, but instead using mock data or something like this. So those are the things that I would like you to take home from this presentation. So the first is like really give AngularJS a try if you haven't done so already. Because it gives you this two-way data binding with automatic refresh, which dramatically reduces the amount of code you write, and at the same time enables things like declarative animation. This machinery that is doing rendering for you can actually do some cool stuff behind the scene. Then you can create your own directives, and by doing so, you can create your own vocabulary. You can create higher level components, and once again, like not only write less JavaScript code, but also like remove the duplication in HTML. But AngularJS, it's not only about the rendering engine, it's really the full framework that you can take advantage of today. But you need to be prepared that for the fact that AngularJS is different, and probably people who've been hanging around in an AngularJS community seen this picture. So you need to be prepared to go through these phases of, you know, oh, it's cool, versus like, oh my god, it's just like, how this be so horribly wrong? And it really happens. I mean, it's just like, it happened to me, it happened to many people that I've been speaking to. So, you know, just be prepared. But at the same time, it's really fun piece of technology to work with, and like so many times I mean, I've been working with this beast for like almost 3 years now, and I still got those moments of like, oh my god, it's so simple. I mean, it's just like really, it's really cool. Bits and pieces. So obviously AngularJS org with the documentation, references to the GitHub project, and so on. I've been using examples from the Angular UI Bootstrap, which is kind of UI companion suite for AngularJS. For learning resources, I can only recommend you my book. Plus, no, but sorry. Actually, there is excellent site called Egghead.io, which has short videos recorded by John Lindquist, which is the absolute master when it comes to WebStorm. So you can not only learn AngularJS, but actually how proficient one can get with the IDE. It's pretty amazing. And as soon as you start, there is like really great community around AngularJS. I mean, I'm so amazed how it exploded. For example, on Stack Overflow, we've got like questions that get answered in a matter of minutes, and it's just pretty crazy. There are also like some folks that are hanging out on the IRC channel that they seem to be there like every time, like, you know, like night and day, answering the questions before you can ask them, and like, you know, like you you don't finish the sentence and they've got an answer. So just like pretty amazing community behind. And this is it, what I've prepared. We've got still 10 minutes, maybe even 12, for the questions. So I would be happy to answer.
So what about the performance?
Okay. So no, it's great. Intro. No, so it has certain performance characteristics. Like for me, I kind of like this topic because like people tend to ask the question like, is it performant? And this is the questions this type of question you can't like answer. You can say like yes or no. I mean, and it doesn't mean anything, right? So you always have to measure and like, you know, on your browser, on your environment, on your application, and so on and so forth. So this is the first thing. There's no absolute performance like holy grail. Then definitely it has certain performance characteristics, and it's just the kind of performance sensitive part is this magic that figures out which DOM elements should be repainted. And this figuring out magic is directly proportional to the number of bindings or number of like the moving parts on the screen. So there were some to actually do the evaluation of the all those bindings or all the model changes. We can actually compare quite a significant number of those, even on the low-end browsers, and apparently up to like 2,000 like bindings on a page. It is not noticeable. So like a browser can say like, okay, I compare this model to that model. This changed, this didn't change. I need to refine this. I need to refine that. Because this is what we can notice somehow. Like I'm typing in a screen something, I'm changing a model value, and then AngularJS needs to figure out which parts of the screen needs to be refined. So we need to compare what has changed and what it influenced on the screen. So it has certain performance characteristics, and those performance characteristics are directly linked to the number of bindings that you've got on a page. So anything below 2,000 should be not noticeable. Then 2,000 seems to be okay. Can we spot 2,000 moving parts on a screen, right? I mean, it's huge, but we need to be careful because like if people start to do a table, let's say that has 5 columns or 10 columns, and then 10 columns and like 200 elements, and you start to get 2,000 bindings. So I know that there were some folks trying to use it for like monitoring, like for service logs or like events from the server. They had like a huge page, like the table, so like thousands of elements, and then yeah. And then you start to notice performance like so. So yeah, I mean it has performance characteristics. You need to be aware what the machinery is doing behind the scenes to not shoot yourself in the foot. On the other hand, I really hope so I didn't like talk about the future somehow, but there is a work in progress on the on building in observers from object observed inside AngularJS. So instead of doing this kind of manual comparison, the dirty checking that AngularJS does today, in the future we are going to rely on object observed, which will be built in the browser in JavaScript, and then it should really remove this problem altogether. But it's going to come in the future. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean, so if you've got the binding, the curly braces in each column, if you use, well, once again, like when we're speaking about tables, we are like usually speaking about the rendering them with ng repeat, and having in each cell like a binding the curly braces this is the read part. And yes, because this for each moving part on the screen, there is the so-called watch registered on a scope, which will do a comparison. Is my value changed or not? So what people were doing. So I think this is this performance trap that people are falling into. The most common is this one. I've got a huge table that I'm like doing with ng repeat, and then I'm starting to have a lot of binding, and I'm starting to noticing a lag. But so if you really got like the application where you have to display like 1,000 of rows, then probably using ng repeat is not the most sensible choice. So then we can create our own ng repeat fast or whatever that doesn't watch the changes but just simply dumps the output of the DOM. So there are ways around it. It's not like like it's not like the whole world stops working. It's just like we are talking about the ng repeat.
Story for you.
For me?
Yes.
Why? This doesn't work.
Yes, please.
Is it on? Is it okay? No. Well, I can always scream. Other question? So this is actually excellent question, and I like it's a pity that we don't have prizes for questions, but this would be my one of the favorites. So the it's funny because I was giving a talk like 2 weeks ago or something like this in Paris, like regarding the topic of like the AngularJS with jQuery, which is kind of fascinating topic on its own. It didn't work last time. Did it? Is it better now? Yeah, cool. So the official or like the message is like the AngularJS works with jQuery. So I mean, you have to include jQuery before, and then AngularJS will start to use it to do DOM manipulation instead of like built-in jQuery Lite, which is kind of like mini version of jQuery. So this is what you see in the official AngularJS documentation, and it's true. Then I guess you are talking about the widget, so I guess about jQuery UI or like one of the other custom widgets that was written in jQuery that is doing DOM manipulation. And
Or you can just, for example, how you can create DOM elements in jQuery.
yeah. So so you can make them. So yeah, this is like the one of the popular questions, I guess, on the Stack Overflow. Like people say, okay, I've created my DOM elements with those fancy attributes, like ng-click or whatever. I've dumped them in the DOM and it doesn't work. So actually, it won't work because like AngularJS doesn't know anything. It didn't like observe those DOM elements. So you can, but there is actually a service, built-in service called compile. So you say like, compile me this. That's why we were talking about the HTML compiler. Just compile me this piece of the DOM, and then I'm going to say, oh, okay, hey, I know what it means. But then really we need to be careful because like sometimes those jQuery plugins are going to create DOM elements when it's live. So the wrapping, I mean, there are certain things that we need to be aware of while wrapping existing jQuery plugins. It's certainly possible, but sometimes requires a bit of working on the edges somehow. I mean, we, like if jQuery is creating certain DOM elements, we need to make sure that they are compiled, and when it's throwing events, we need to know that AngularJS is aware of those and so on. So it is certainly possible to wrap existing jQuery into directives, but it requires a bit of work.
What about the use of Angular in the other web browser? There is Berg
On the mobile browsers or like the
mobile
so what is the so I think the once again official story about the official and true the story about the browser support is that I was mentioning those like tests that are run on each check-in, and the AngularJS is continuously tested around like with the range of like desktop browsers. So like everything starting from IE 8 to IE 10. I don't know if the IE 11 is already tested as well. So all the most, so I'm mentioning IE because I guess this is the most sensitive part. All the other modern browsers are also part of the continuous test. There are guys working on putting also mobile browsers in a test like through Source Labs. So this is what is executed on each commit and like guaranteed that like all the tests are passing and and nothing is broken. Then for the exotic stuff, they were like, I don't know why, but at one point AngularJS was really popular on the in kind of embedded devices, like people were doing applications in PlayStation and so on. So yeah, it works like pretty well across the range of browsers, but then there are probably there are browsers or like the things that it can't work. But like I'm not kind of aware of the specificities of each and every browser. So like the ones that are part of the continuous testing are guaranteed to work more or less. One more question.
I think that ng-root was deleted from the core modules in the version 1.2. Is that a call to use UI router instead?
So I mean, no, it's not a direct call to use UI router. so I don't know if everyone heard the question. So the question was like in 1.2, you can start to see the trend of breaking up the framework into sub files. So like certain parts are getting extracted. So at the beginning there was like the resource that was extracted, and the story continues like the routing get extracted from the core, and this is on one hand to enable things like UI routers to coexist peacefully. So I mean, if people are not using the built-in routing, they can just take UI router and like not duplicate the code. But it's just the general trend that is going to continue, like breaking apart the framework and making it more modular, so you can only take pieces that you really need in your application. I don't know if you've got time for one more, but whichever, as soon as all the developers agree. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. I will be around here, so I mean, if you've got any further questions, like, don't hesitate.